So thank you so much for being here. So the reason Bishop can say that if he calls me, I say, when you call, I'll come, is because when I met him, I can't remember anymore, Will Thomas, I was talking to him about my work. We both happened to be in Atlanta at the time at CNBC. And I was telling him about my work. I hadn't done the State of the Black Church study. None of those things had been done. And he was like, I think you should talk to my bishop. He'll support you. And I was like, I don't think so. He was like, no, come over and talk to him. I'm serious. Like, he'll support you. And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, come on over here. I was like, I don't want to go see your bishop. I don't think he's going to support me, okay? Leave me alone. So he dragged me over there, and I went, and sight unseen, work unseen, he trusted what I was doing, what God was doing in me, and he committed to supporting me then, and he's never stopped. So I want you guys to know you have an amazing bishop. Amazing bishop, amazing man, and I'm just grateful for him. I'm also so excited that he's in the second. I was calling all the time, like, Bishop, like, so does it look like you're going to the second? I'm in DC a lot, and I just knew that the second was going to benefit greatly. You know, we don't always like what happens, but sometimes we get stuff really, really right. And I think he's really, really right for the second. So I wanted to go ahead and do some numbers with you today. I mean, this session. Do we have it? Okay. We're going to talk about the Black church, where we were, where we are, and where we are headed. I'm sorry that my picture shows up on everything. I promise it's my graphics person, not me. So we got to learn a couple of things when we were doing the State of the Black Church study. Can we go ahead and go to? Thank you. So on it. The Black church is made up of 56% women, 44% men. 11% of the people will tell you they are spiritual and not religious. We have 64% who are single, 36% who are married. 71% identify as Christian as opposed to 88% more than 21 years ago. It's probably the best numbers in Christianity when we look at all of the ethnicities. Christianity Today had a big issue, an article they put out saying, well, two things. One was that the Black church was losing its members because Black people were no longer identifying as Christian. And so I had to have a conversation with them because I was like, you can't present this like you do white church numbers. We have just gone through an administration without leadership who intentionally used their pretend faith to get over on people. And so it's not that Black people are only identifying as Christian at 71%. It's that only 71% of us are willing to comfortably say we're Christian blanketly. When we did the focus groups and we looked deeper, we could see that the real issue was people didn't know how they should identify as Christian, but not the ones that think you should lock kids up in cages. How do I identify as Christian, but not the one who invites somebody who's a predator to their churches, before their people, who sells Bibles? It was very difficult for Black people, especially Black young adults, to explain I am Christian, not that white evangelical version though. And if they couldn't explain that, they did not want to identify as Christian. Here's the thing. It won't take you long to know that these are tough days. You hear me? This administration is literally trying to kill us. Trump is a horrible president. But he's an amazing pastor. He knows how to put a clarion call out there. When he speaks, they understand the assignment. They carry on in his absence. They carry on beyond the hurt. They listen to what his end goal is, and they meet him there. And when he's not about that life, they are.
That's true.
He is a horrible president. He's an exceptional pastor. I'm not sure we know how to make a clarion call anymore. Today when people go to church, they have to decide, okay, what is your church about? Okay, now what is your church about? Because we don't all seem to be on the same page. You have one woman who paraded in black churches who is now calling on African angels, who's now in the White House. Who has no name without black people, but will not remember black people while she's there. So when we look at the overview of the church and the state of the black church, we have to remember that these things were done, these numbers were gathered under horrible conditions. When we did this study, we were in the pandemic, and I remember initially we were waiting until the pandemic was over, we thought, to do it. Like, give it a couple months, let this thing build. I was like, I don't think it's gonna be over. They were like, no, just a couple months. And so we went ahead and did it in the pandemic. Little did we know, if we would have done it pre-pandemic, it wouldn't have been worth anything. So we did this in the pandemic and under his administration. What we did that we don't talk about that we see today is we wanted to gauge trauma as well. The trauma of a pandemic, the fear that existed, and the trauma of a bad administration. So 80% of black people will tell you that their faith is important. In the majority of white evangelical churches, not only did they affirm these thoughts, they told them how to walk out their faith. Do we tell people how to walk out our faith? I mean, like, clearly, not like do good to others. They told them, go and vote. Don't leave your community exposed. Protect your community. Do what is righteous in the eyes of the Lord. And they understood the assignment. We learned, and this will come up a bit later on in the presentation, that leadership was the most important thing in the black church that people cared about. But that's because we did this study in a leadership deficit. And I have preachers who come and pastors who say all the time, like, you know, I'm just trying to figure out a way to talk to them. I'm just trying to figure out a way to deal with them. I'm just trying to figure out a way to communicate. But Gen Z told us that the greatest authority in the black church, in the black community, was the pastor. And when black Twitter tells you you're no longer valuable and people are tired of hearing it from you, and you believe it, you give up your voice. When Gen Z is telling you they need a voice. Gen Z will be 28 and under. The same group of people that most people are afraid of what they'll become is saying that they listen to the voice of the pastor more than boomers. When we were doing the study and I was going through data with generations, I remember saying, dang, who made boomers mad? I should have opened up the Black Boomer Cafe. We realized that boomers were the most disgruntled generation in the Black church, which told us just because you see them doesn't mean they're pleased. Boomers were willing to go to church. They were willing to participate while they were unhappy. Trump is a horrible president, but an exceptional pastor. Boomers actually respond to their pastor like his people respond to their clarion call. They are committed. Now, my family's AME, I've been AME, so one thing I know is when a family is committed to their church, in the AME church, baby pastors come and go. But that's their church. Always. You can come in, you can go out, but we will remain. That's how boomers operate. But boomers were greatly disturbed. The biggest thing that let boomers down was that they just didn't expect to be here. They put in so much work. They did so much for their children. They made sure they had an education. They worked the same job that they did not even like for decades. They bought homes that their children could have. They fought. They were part of the movement. They joined churches because of how their churches engaged in the movement. And here we are. Boomers did not get what they worked for. Boomers did not get what they expected. And sometimes it's not just what's happened on the outside, it's also what happened on the inside. Boomers thought that they were putting so much into their church that they would see some type of reward in society. And up until, if we want to be honest, George Floyd, you still had a lot of Black churches who were like, I don't talk about politics at my church.
Sorry about that.
Justice ain't biblical. You got to preach the Bible. While we were doing a study, well, the United Methodist Church did a study saying that you needed to keep politics out of the pulpit. We did a study with Black millennials that said if they had to divorce the truth about what they had to live in every day in order to come to church, they didn't want to be there.
Wow.
Guess which article got shared most? The one that said keep politics out of your pulpit. Sometimes we just miss it. Sometimes we relinquish our power so quickly because we're so sure nobody wants it. People have an issue with millennials, and I get it. We're a whole lot of things. But if you don't like Frankenstein, you got to ask who created him. This generation didn't just come out of thin air. We had choices. I don't feel like that's true about me. My nephew is a younger millennial. He had choices. I remember coming back from college one day, and my mom cooked, and she had macaroni and cheese, and I was like, putting some on his plate. She said, no, don't put none on my plate. I said, well, you gonna eat this macaroni? She almost said, no, he's lactose intolerant. What do you call what I can't eat liver? Because you made me sit at the table for 90 whole minutes until I ate that food. But now we have choices, and here's the thing, you can't say, you have a choice in what you wear. The kids go to school in tutus because they like to wear their costumes. I just didn't want to fight. I get it. They have a choice in what they wear, a choice in where they go, a choice in what they do, a choice in what they eat. I'm not saying it's bad, and then all of a sudden, we want to get to church and say, you have to go. Or we want to tell them what they have to believe. People think millennials are going to walk in church and they're going to feel something nostalgic. That's not happening. Because there are millennials who have never entered a church. Not even for a funeral. So they can't return to something that does not exist. When we did our study on black millennials, I remember there being so we do a snowball, right? We do about 1,200 surveys, then we go to focus groups, and then we go to interviews. We were doing an interview because we learned that there were a good number of black children who sat in church all their lives. They went to the lock-ins, that might be why they left. They went to the lock-ins, they said their Easter speeches, they went to children's church and youth church, and they never believed.
Wow. Wow.
And they said telling a black family that you don't believe felt like somebody who had to come out to their family. I remember talking to one of the people who said she didn't believe and she stayed in church. And I said to her, "What's your issue with God?" And she said, "What?" I said, "What's your issue with God?" She said, "I don't have one. Having an issue with God is like having an issue with the tooth fairy." And then I was like, "Oh, you don't believe, don't believe." I was floored to hear her say this. When we ask about the times in people's lives that they appreciated church most, guess what age group that is? You can tell me. Is it 30s? 50s, 60s? Children. That's the life stage that's appreciated most. After children, it's youth. And then it's almost like nothing. You know why? Because the programming was intentional for them. They went somewhere where somebody communicated with them well. They always had them in mind when they were creating. They spoke to them. They had chairs that fit them. They had colors that they liked. Somebody was trying to communicate with them specifically. We have to remember that when we're programming for adults. We have to remember that when we're preaching. We have to remember that when we're doing pastoral care. Pastoral care is the game changer in this world. My mom has a friend who is 77 years old. She said she goes to church, but she doesn't give her tithe there because she doesn't know the pastor. So she sends her tithes back to the church in Memphis, where she knows the pastor. I said, so you go there and you just steal. You sit down, you use them people good air, good heat, good power, good communion cups, good punch after service, good donuts before Sunday school, and you give your money somewhere else. At 77 years old, you know what she said? I have to give to a place where I know the pastor knows me and gives me attention. I said, I get it, but since we can't send you to therapy, let me tell you this. When do you become mature enough in Christ that you now give others attention? Whenever I would get on the airplane, when I was little, my parents divorced. My mom said, stop telling people this. My parents divorced. My parents divorced, so I would have to fly back and forth from Michigan to Texas, and I absolutely hated it every time I had to go back to Michigan. Sorry, guys. And when I was little, and I would get on the plane, they would always make sure they opened the door, show me the pilot, and give me a pen, right? And then one day, I think it was I have a cousin who's a flight attendant. And it just, I don't know why, it just dawned on me, because he was telling me who was in the cockpit. Why don't they introduce me to the pilot anymore? Now when I get on, they be like, go on. If it's a bad day, they be like, go to 18D. If it's a good day, they say go to 2C. I remember when we got off, we were in Atlanta, and I asked my cousin, I'm like, Donald Ray. You know, I'm country. Donald Ray. Why do y'all introduce children to the pilot and not adults? He says, we assume that if you've been doing this long enough, you've had enough introductions that we don't have to keep doing this. When it comes to faith, at some point we should be growing believers so that when they're children, when they're babes, they do need a lot of attention. But we're intentional about growing them, so by the time they're adults, they don't need the attention because they've had enough. What they do now is turn around and engage others so that they can give them the attention they need. We are in a loneliness epidemic. People need people. You know the number one way that people meet their mates? Online. So 60% of the people, I can't even meet 60% of the people. The second way is through friends. After that, the numbers tank. So people come to church. Let's see the church attendance slide. People come to church and they engage. And it's not always for Christ. It's not always for their faith. We have to grow with each other. We mature people, right? We have to grow together. You know, you meet somebody new and you sit on the phone and be like, what you doing? Nothing. What you doing? Nothing. Huh? Oh, I didn't say nothing. That's when you're in the talking phase. Sometimes people come to church, they're just in the talking phase, baby. And if you find somebody with enough attention, they're going to be like, what you doing? Nothing. What you doing? Nothing. Because just because people come to church don't mean they're committed. When we looked at church attendance, I'm not even going to tell you the numbers because it was lies. Now, part of what you do as a researcher is you ask the right questions and you ask them enough so that you get the truth. You can tell the numbers when they're shaky. Well, I just knew because I done been in church all my life, those are lies. But when I looked at the numbers of people, especially men, who said they went to church regularly, they said, what do we do with these numbers? I said, you help the people to be who they want to be. If we're asking them how often they go to church and they're saying they go to church weekly, and only half of them are there, what can we do to help you be the person you say you are? That means they want to be churchgoers, friends. They want to be there. But it's hard to find the place you go. We also assume that when people go to church and they join church, they go back and that everybody's excited about it and everybody wants to encourage them and, you know, they're going to go home to a big old celebration. That's not true for everyone. Some people have consequences to the actions of joining your church. And that's when pastoral care comes in. When I worked at Friendship West, it's the Wild Wild West, okay? We would find zigzags up in the balcony. If you don't know what it means, don't even worry. You're too holy, and I do not want you to know. I had to ask and Google it too. I remember there's this lady, and I don't remember her email address, but clutch your pearls. It was something like nasty kitty at some, right? It's a wild place. I'm sure her dollars had some glitter on it, and we can appreciate that.
Oh, okay.
So I was over assimilation, and there was a ministry called First Friends. So after they accept Christ, they give them to First Friends, and First Friends, talk to them, they'll call them, they'll be their go-to. And the lady was just really going in like, you've accepted God now. You gotta let that, she was, just in case you guys didn't get the glitter reference.
Many of us did.
She was a dancer. Not like the Misty Copeland kind, though. And so they were just telling, you've accepted Christ now. You go back, you're different. You gotta do something different. You don't go back to what you used to do. She said, who gonna pay these bills? Who gonna feed these kids? Sometimes we have to realize if there are things you don't like, you have to do something about it. So either you gather around her and you pay them bills and feed them kids, or you help her to have an exit strategy. When we talked about friendliness of the congregation, so many things came up. When we looked at it, money was number one. When we talked about the things they appreciated or didn't appreciate about the congregation. The things they didn't appreciate, money was number one. We have not had a national person to have a money scandal in the black church in decades. I'm talking about CNN ticker. Pastor so-and-so, so-and-so. I know where I am. I'm not talking about that. I'm just not. So breathe easy. There's nothing to come after this. I told you my mama A&B. I don't play with her. Okay? I'm talking about like the bakers, okay, friends? We have not seen that in decades, and if you actually go back, we're not sure we've seen it. But the biggest issue that comes up for people is money. They have not encountered it, but it's their biggest issue. Why? Because the tropes in the media. Miss Parker, Miss Parker. Fancy cars, fancy suits, trying to give communion to Miss Parker. Every time you see the black church show up in media, money. They act like we just mishandle money. Even when Christians put us on TV, like Devon Franklin and Kirk Franklin and Holly did Kingdom Business. And when the woman wanted to do a new CD, they called it a missions offering. And they took the money and they put her in the studio to make a CD. If that's what they keep seeing on TV, but they've never seen it in real life, is it real? Yes. If 99% of the people say you're a liar and you never told a lie, you're a liar. Until you stand strong long enough to prove it differently, prove them differently. That does not mean you told a lie, but that doesn't mean you pretend as if everybody's not thinking this. We do right by the people. Okay, show us. Transparency when it comes to money really does help. Now, I'm not saying tell them everything, because you know one thing a black person don't do is count your money. I also know as a business owner, to let somebody who has never had to see those numbers see how much overhead alone costs, it's just tricky. I'm not saying show them everything, but they should be able to go to brunch over mimosas. I didn't tell them to drink it, they're just drinking. And they should be able to say, at my church, we feed about 200 people every Sunday. Why do I go to church? Why do I give at that church? Because we do this, because we give away this, because children need this, and we're always there for this. They should be able to have some bragging rights. Churches are so humble when it comes to telling what you do for others. Now, when it comes to membership, churches are humble. But when it comes to telling what you do, you have to tell people what you do. People are attracted to success. And we think success means LED walls and sexy church. But it doesn't. We've learned success for people means that you do for all people in your community. That we don't have and raise money for our new computer lab, but then nobody can actually go into the computer lab. We're gonna have a workout facility, but nobody gets to go to the workout facility. Whatever the tropes are, whatever it is that people believe about the church as a whole or your church, you have to speak to it. If you're quiet, it doesn't go away, they do. In a time where there's a leadership deficit, when one of the other countries had a paper out that said, those idiots elected the village idiot again. Couldn't even be offended. I was like, At a time when there's a leadership deficit, you have to show leadership. You know what people think about your church. We do, right? When I was at Friendship West, they thought we were the club church. They said people were only going there to meet somebody. Now that wasn't true. Because I saw the people in that congregation, there was nobody there to meet. But you know what people think about your church. So you have to speak to the thing that they assume is happening. Okay? John 5, Pool of Bethesda. He's standing between the sheep gate and the pool. He's standing between mercy and sacrifice. You should imagine that everyone you meet stands between mercy and sacrifice. That they're this close to making it, and they're this close to losing it. That's how we should do ministry. Black church appreciation. Number 1 was leadership. Number 2 was preaching. Number 3 was music. Everyone says, what kind of music? We don't know. We didn't ask that. That would have to be like a separate study. They want to know how long should the preaching be? We didn't ask that. 1, you can do it for yourself in your own context. But beyond that, remember we talked about binge watching. The problem is not attention span. The problem is content. If black men have to go online and watch YouTube for 6 hours from black Hebrew Israelites to learn there's a black presence in the Bible.
All right.
You think Jesus was a white man? No, did you? Yeah. They shouldn't have to search so hard to get what is true. People want leadership. People want to be told no. I know, it doesn't feel like it. People want to be told no. Have you ever seen a church that just grew? You just couldn't imagine how they got there? I can almost guarantee you at some point in their ministry, they've started preaching sermons like 3 ways you, 3 steps to, 5 ways you know. Because people want a roadmap. People want rules. When we did the State of the Black Church study, I did walk away from it saying I still believe in the black church. I had a whole lot of reasons to still believe in the black church. That was true. You know, that doesn't change at all. But I also had to acknowledge where we mess up. If you find yourself in the worst neighborhood in your community or worst part of your community, are you safe? Because see, when I go to Woodtown, they be like, oh my goodness, that's Reverend Bree, I love her. I'm safe. One way to easily combat those kind of moments is stop having everybody come to your church.
Right.
Come ye in here instead of go ye therefore. You can set up the same Hallelujah, Halloween, Harvest, Thanksgiving, whatever. We can set up the same carnivals or, Hallelujah days in an apartment complex. Like we do at our own church. You can go set up right on in the hood like you do at your church. I understand we want to be on our turf because it's comfortable. But I just don't think that's what God is calling us to do. And some of us can say, we don't even know how to talk to people to tell them to come. I dare you to go. I dare you to go. When we were doing the State of the Black Church study, and I told you I walked away saying I still believe in the black church, I also walked away saying, this country is primed for cults right now.
Wow.
They were like, why are you saying this? People said things like, the one thing that they wanted most, like in their service or whatever, when they walked away, was to have an encounter. Every time I used to say this, people would be like, what if we can't afford them smoke machines and LED lights? That's not an encounter. People want an encounter and people want rules. When they go to churches that give them rules and even tell them what an encounter is supposed to feel like or look like, they stay committed to those places. Because when we're in a leadership deficit, we are begging for leadership. If people want rules and they're going to church with 3 ways and 5 ways and how you know, and everything we do is just so sophisticated and our sermon should be in the New York Times, but they can't be on Crenshaw Boulevard. We have to actually do the work for the people who are there. Not our peers.
Yeah.
It's hard online to preach for people and not your peers.
That's good.
Because the people just gonna talk in the comments. Your peers gonna keep going to every conference about, did you see her? She's just horrible, she flunked. I don't even know who she was talking to, not you. Before my sister died, she went to this church, and it was a storefront, and they were having homecoming, Bishop, and so they were inviting everybody to church, and so I went to the church, I really didn't want to be there, if I'm honest. My sister was sick for 18 years. She gave all she had. And I just didn't think she knew how to pick a good pastor. And nothing broke my heart like some of the jokers she went to. Nothing. So we're in her church, it's a storefront, and the pastor is preaching. You know, it's packed. Let me say it like, Doc, it was packed. And so he's preaching, and he's like, I'm not talking to y'all, I'm not talking to y'all, I'm talking to them, I'm talking to the people in the balcony. And so I was like, so he kept preaching, he's preaching hard, sweating, just giving out he got. But you know what, I don't expect y'all to get it, but the people in the balcony gonna get it. That's okay, I got a vision for this church, and if y'all don't want to support the people in the balcony do, finally I'm so immature, I just busted out laughing. Because you have the most people you will ever have in this church today. And instead of talking to who's here, you talking to invisible people in the balcony. But that's what we do when we preach to our peers and not our pews. Talk to the people who are there. You program for who is in the building and you market for who is not. Okay? We're going to do this program so we can get more men. So that means the people who are there got to suffer through this football game? I mean, I know women like football. I just don't know anything about it. I can't give you no illustration or nothing. I found out the Super Bowl was the other Sunday. If you say, oh yeah, we want young adults, we're gonna have, this is bad programming because it's actually for youth. We're gonna have a skate party, we're gonna go bowling, we're gonna do this. And you don't have any youth there, you don't have any, who is suffering through that? You program for the people who are there. You got to give the people what they want. As a society, we were incredibly confident in our abilities. As a church, we were deeply connected to a building. And as a staff, we were deeply connected to our titles based on power and not need.
Yeah.
When I go somewhere to preach, it breaks my heart when they tell me, Doc, it's not going to be as many people in the sanctuary, but they're watching online. Because I don't want to make them feel like I need there to be hundreds of people in order for it to be okay. We are so tied to this building. We have rooms that we're not going to use. We did Christian education classes and said stuff like saved, single, and having sex. We talk about being saved, we talk about being single, you ain't never going to talk about the other part of it, so people stopped trusting what we were saying. We said we're going to be cutting edge. We're going to be progressive. We're going to have risque conversations. And we didn't. People talk about Christian education, those practical classes are what people want. But usually those affinity type classes, it's probably what kind of killed the brand of Christian education. You have rooms we're not going to use, but there are entrepreneurs who need an office. You still have a graphics person part-time. You're only pushing out 3 graphics a week. And there's an entrepreneur whose company can be, made or broken based on that ability. We have to start to think differently about what we have in our hand. And we have to start thinking differently about who has access to it. We can't keep using these rooms like our grandmother's living room with the plastic on it. new furniture. So we went to Louisiana. My brother and my daddy go to pick up this prized possession, plastic on the couch. They pick it up and the middle just drops because it's dry rotted. It was so special that you got nothing out of it. My mother's 76 years old and she says, getting older is tough. My mother goes to the grocery store, Bishop, in Baccarat 540. And Gucci with Louis Vuitton. And I said, Mama, I don't. Why do you wear this kind of stuff to the grocery store? You know, I don't got that kind of money. Why do you wear this kind of stuff to the doctor? Every time I go to the doctor, they be like, what you have on today, Miss Parker? She said, because when you get my age, you realize every day is a good day to use your good stuff. So when you're thinking about ministry and the budget and programming and who deserves it every day is a good day to use your good stuff. I understand my time is up, but this is what I would share with you if I could share just one more thing. While we're begging for people to come, they're begging to find a place they can go.
Wow.
We're a perfect match for this world. But you don't get to know them staying in your church, in your pulpit, in your office. The churches start acting like people who are online dating. If you happen to be on this platform at the same time, if you happen to be in this building at the same time, maybe we can connect. But there are people who are dying, literally broken hearts because of loneliness. So you sit there lonely, and they sit there by themselves lonely. We are a perfect match for this world. But you will not find it in comfort. You find it by going to find the people who need you most. And if you want to, sometimes we forget, right? Or we have just less engagement, especially in the pandemic. Think about who you were at your worst, where you were going. Now, they probably closed those places down. Ask somebody for the 2025 equivalent. And that's where they are, waiting to meet somebody who's going to give them a conversion experience. Because this whole, from church to church, that's not growing a church. We're supposed to be winning people who are lost. I hate the word winning, but we're supposed to be helping those who are lost find what they've been really looking for, what their heart is looking for. We are a perfect match. There's somebody looking for your ministry. There's somebody looking for the oldest mother in the church because they've never had a grandmother. There's somebody who is looking for somebody who is married who will be honest. They're a perfect match. But when you meet them, you have to be careful how you treat them. What if they're coming in there and they're desperate? The dress is too short and too tight. You gonna talk about the clothes or you gonna talk about the heart? Because let me be clear. Sometimes it ain't got nothing to do with us trying to be sexy. We gain weight. Stuff is kicked up where it didn't used to be kicked up. Stuff is stretched out where it didn't used to be stretched out. You gonna spend all your time worried about my attire when all I need is a little Jenny Craig, but something's wrong with my heart for real.
Yeah.
We're the perfect match for this world. But we have to spend the time to go and meet them.
Yeah.